There is a sacred rhythm in the universe that only those who listen deeply can hear, a rhythm that beats beneath the noise of ambition, beneath the rush of days, beneath the human hunger for proof. Miracles do not appear as disruptions of nature, but as fulfillments of it. They are the language of heaven spoken softly into the fabric of earth, woven not by accident but by intention. To the hurried soul, they seem like coincidences. To the awakened heart, they are divine invitations. An invitation never forces itself upon you, it waits quietly, watching whether your spirit is open enough to see beyond what is visible. What we call miracles are not interruptions to our story. They are alignments within it, signals that heaven has stepped closer, asking us to respond not with fear, but with recognition. To see a miracle is not to be privileged, it is to be perceptive. Many stand before miracles daily yet walk past them unseeing, because they expected thunder and received a whisper. They wanted spectacle, but were offered silence. But heaven rarely shouts. It speaks through ordinary vessels. An unexpected word, a door reopening that once was closed. An inner peace where once there was turmoil. These are not random occurrences. They are answers dressed as simplicity. The divine prefers to clothe power in gentleness, for it is not seeking to impress but to transform. When we say that miracles are invitations wrapped in obedience, we speak of this divine pattern. The miracle is never apart from our participation. It asks not for our effort to make it happen, but for our willingness to follow where it leads. Obedience is not blind compliance, it is alignment. It is the quiet decision to move with the rhythm of heaven, even when logic protests. It is to trust that the unseen is more real than what the eyes can measure. The one who obeys does not command miracles, but walks into them. The one who hesitates waits at the gate while heaven calls softly, "Come and see." There is a temptation to believe that miracles are earned, that they come as a reward for perfect faith or flawless virtue. But this is not their nature. A miracle is not compensation, it is revelation. It reveals the heart of the giver, not the worthiness of the receiver. It arrives because love desires to be known, and love cannot remain hidden forever. The miracle comes not when you have proven yourself, but when you have ceased pretending to be your own savior. When you reach the end of self-effort, grace rushes in like water to a thirsty field. The obedience that opens miracles is not strenuous, it is simple. It says, "I do not understand, but I will trust." That single act of trust shifts the atmosphere around you. Consider how the great movements of grace in history began with ordinary acts of obedience. A man builds a boat in a dry land. A woman opens her door to strangers. A young shepherd faces a giant with only a stone. None of these acts were logical, but all of them were invitations to witness something beyond logic. The miracle is never in the act itself. It is in the alignment between divine will and human trust. When the two meet, time bends and eternity breaks through. Yet this obedience often feels like walking through fog. The path is not lit all at once. You see only enough for the next step. That is the divine design. For if you saw the whole journey, you would not need faith. Faith is the bridge between the unseen promise and the visible fulfillment. When you step upon it, you participate in the very mystery that created the world, the word made manifest through trust. Each act of obedience is a seed, invisible at first, yet destined to bloom into revelation. Miracles are not sudden explosions, they are quiet accumulations. Every small yes builds upon the last until the unseen weight of faith tips the scales of reality. Heaven does not measure time as we do, it measures readiness. A miracle delayed is not a miracle denied. It is a miracle deepening its roots. The soil of your heart must be soft enough to receive it. For a hardened heart cannot hold divine tenderness. The preparation is part of the miracle. What you perceive as waiting is heaven perfecting alignment. If you would see your miracle, learn to honor the invisible. Give reverence to the quiet stirrings of your spirit, for they are the first signs of divine movement. The miracle always begins within before it appears without. A change in your perception is often the first crack in the wall that has kept grace from flooding in. When you begin to see differently, You begin to live differently, and life begins to respond in kind. The same event that once frustrated you becomes the very proof that something greater is unfolding. The eyes of faith transform obstacles into invitations. There is also a danger in romanticizing miracles, as though they exist only to dazzle or to rescue. Miracles are not magic, they are meaning revealed. They do not suspend the laws of the universe, they reveal the deeper law beneath them. The law of divine intention. To witness a miracle is not merely to be amazed, but to be awakened. It calls you to deeper responsibility, for once you see the divine hand move, you cannot return to blindness. To experience a miracle is to be summoned into partnership with heaven's purpose. The miracle is not the end. It is the beginning of your stewardship. This is why miracles often demand obedience after they appear. They ask, "Will you now walk as one who knows you are seen? Will you carry this light faithfully?" For miracles are not meant to make us spectators. They are meant to make us participants in the unfolding story of grace. You cannot hoard a miracle. You can only live from it. It is also true that miracles often come disguised as interruptions. We pray for clarity and receive disruption. We ask for comfort and receive challenge. Yet if you look closely, these interruptions are the gateways through which new life enters. The divine answer often arrives wrapped in inconvenience. The question is not whether the miracle is present. It is whether you will recognize it beneath its disguise. Obedience allows you to unwrap it. To live in awareness of miracles is to cultivate wonder. Wonder is not naivete, it is clarity untainted by cynicism. It is the recognition that existence itself is miraculous, that every breath is borrowed light. Those who lose their sense of wonder close the door on divine surprises, for they have replaced reverence with control. But those who live with open eyes, who see beauty even in brokenness, keep their hearts porous to grace. They become dwellings where miracles feel at home. Miracles also move through relationships. Sometimes your miracle is another person, carrying within them the answer to your prayer, unaware that heaven is using them as a vessel. And sometimes you are that vessel for another. When you obey the quiet nudge to speak, to give, to forgive, to act with compassion, you become part of someone else's miracle. In that moment, heaven flows through you. There is no greater joy than to realize that you have been used as a bridge between divine intention and human need. Miracles are not accidents, they are intersections. They occur where divine timing meets human readiness. You cannot control the timing, but you can prepare the readiness. Keep your heart uncluttered. Keep your spirit awake. The divine will not place pearls where there is no room to receive them. Make space. Silence the noise of doubt and fear. Miracles need stillness to land. When a miracle happens, it is not because you forced heaven's hand. It is because you opened your own. Heaven is not reluctant to bless. We are reluctant to believe. The act of opening your hand is symbolic of surrender, of trust, of releasing the need to manage outcomes. You cannot grasp a miracle tightly, for it is not meant to be controlled. You can only hold it lightly, knowing it belongs to the flow of grace. And yet, perhaps the greatest miracle is not external at all. It is the reawakening of your own faith after seasons of silence. It is when you dare to hope again, to pray again, to love again. When your heart says yes after being broken, heaven celebrates. For that yes is the spark that reignites the divine dialogue between your soul and its source. You may ask, how do I recognize my miracle when it arrives? The answer is simple: by peace. True miracles carry a peace that surpasses understanding. They do not inflate your pride or agitate your mind, they quiet your spirit. They make you feel at home in a way that nothing else can. Peace is heaven's signature. When it rests upon something, you know you are standing on holy ground. Do not measure a miracle by its size, but by its significance. The smallest shift in your heart may have greater eternal consequence than a visible spectacle. The person who forgives an old wound has witnessed a miracle as profound as the one who walks on water. Heaven values transformation more than display. The world will try to rationalize what it cannot explain. It will name coincidence what heaven names providence. But you are not of that world. You are called to see through a different lens, one that recognizes the divine pattern behind apparent randomness. When you train your eyes to see with faith, every sunrise becomes a revelation, every encounter a possibility. You live not waiting for miracles, but living in them. The obedience that opens miracles is an art of listening. Listen when your spirit stirs unexpectedly, when your thoughts turn toward kindness, when your heart nudges you to act without knowing why. These are divine signals guiding you toward alignment. Do not silence them with reasoning. Respond. The smallest step in obedience creates ripples in eternity. Miracles are always near, yet they respect your freedom. They wait for your yes. They stand at the door and knock, not demanding entry but desiring recognition. The moment you open your awareness, they rush in. What was once ordinary becomes radiant. What was once painful becomes purposeful. You realize that heaven had been here all along, waiting for you to awaken. And perhaps that is the final secret of all miracles. They do not enter your life from outside. They rise within you. The external event is only the reflection of an internal awakening. When you perceive differently, reality rearranges to match your new sight. Heaven does not so much intervene as it reveals itself. The miracle is not new, it is newly seen. So, on this day, when the air carries a quiet sense of expectancy, remember that miracles are not accidents. They are invitations. The divine is not asking for your striving but your seeing. It waits for a heart humble enough to listen, bold enough to trust, open enough to say yes. For the miracle that awaits you has already been written. It simply needs to be opened. There is a gate that does not stand in the world but within you, a threshold made not of stone or wood but of surrender. It does not open with force, nor can it be pried by intellect or ambition. It opens only to the hand that has learned to release. For what heaven gives cannot be seized. It can only be received. The greatest miracles are not earned by strength, but unveiled through stillness. And today, October 5, the invitation stands before you. To stop striving and start opening. To trust that what has been promised is already near, waiting not for your power but for your peace. The world teaches you to achieve, to chase, to conquer the unseen with effort and noise. But the divine works through reversal. It whispers that to gain, you must yield; to receive, you must let go. This is the paradox of the sacred life. That the door to everything you have prayed for swings open when you cease demanding it. The hands that clutch cannot receive. The mind that insists cannot hear. Only the heart that bows becomes a vessel wide enough to hold heaven. And this is the hour to bow, not in defeat but in alignment, for surrender is not giving up. It is being gathered up by a wisdom larger than your own. You have wrestled long enough with closed doors, with dreams that seemed always a step ahead of your reach. Perhaps you thought faith was a form of effort, that if only you pushed harder or believed louder, something would shift. But miracles do not respond to volume, they respond to resonance. They come where faith and surrender meet, like two notes in perfect harmony. The heart that surrenders ceases to treat heaven as distant. It recognizes that grace is not coming from afar. It is already here, pressing gently against the edges of your resistance, waiting for you to stop fighting what is already yours. To open the miracle before you is not to strive upward, but to sink inward. It is to realize that the treasure you have been searching for is not hidden in the clouds, but buried beneath your fear. You must dig not with shovels of willpower, but with the quiet patience of trust. The gate does not open because you have conquered yourself, but because you have consented to be transformed. The greatest miracle is not that your circumstances change. It is that your sight does. When you see differently, the very same world gleams with divine light. The call to surrender is not a call to passivity. It is a call to divine participation. It asks that you move, not out of anxiety, but out of attunement. The surrendered heart does not stop acting, it acts with clarity. It no longer rushes into what is not meant for it. It waits, not with dread, but with expectancy. Waiting becomes worship, for in that stillness the unseen aligns itself in your favor. Every miracle has its appointed hour, and you are standing in one now. The timing is not your doing, it is heaven's choreography. You need only to say yes. Imagine standing before a locked gate with a key you did not know you held. That is the human condition. We wander in search of answers, yet the answer has always been carried in our pocket. Faith's quiet key called surrender. When you finally use it, you discover that the gate was never locked. It was your hand that hesitated. The moment you release control, the hinges move with ease, and what stands beyond floods your soul like morning light. You realize that heaven had been ready long before you were. There is a sweetness in surrender that striving will never taste. Striving leaves you wary, even when it wins. Surrender restores you, even when nothing visible has changed. For in surrender you return to the flow from which you were made. You become a current within a greater river, moving without fear of where it bends, trusting that the source knows the way better than you ever could. To live this way is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is to be rooted in the unshakable, knowing that what is meant for you cannot pass you by. Faith without surrender becomes anxiety in disguise. It prays for a miracle yet clings to control. It says, "I trust," while secretly drafting backup plans. But the miracle you seek today will not step into a divided heart. It waits for unity, the moment when your belief and your letting go become one. This is the secret rhythm of heaven. Miracles move not toward effort but toward openness. You cannot command the wind, but you can open your window to let it in. And perhaps that is what today asks of you. To open your window, to lift the latch of your doubt, to allow the fresh air of divine timing to fill your room. It will not roar in like a storm, it will arrive like a gentle breeze, carrying peace before proof, whispering that everything you prayed for has already begun its unfolding. You may not see it yet, but you will feel the atmosphere change. Heaven always announces itself with peace. It is tempting to believe that surrender means doing nothing, but true surrender is the most courageous act of the Spirit. It means choosing to trust when evidence is absent, to rest when fear demands motion, to believe that unseen hands are working on your behalf. When you live this way, your soul ceases to panic over outcomes. You no longer measure life by what happens but by what awakens within you as it happens. The miracle begins in that awakening. There is a language heaven speaks fluently that the restless heart cannot hear, the language of stillness. When you become quiet enough, you realize that heaven has been speaking all along, not in thunder or lightning, but in the slow unfurling of grace. Every delay, every detour, every disappointment was a syllable in that sacred sentence. You mistook silence for absence, but silence was the space where the miracle was forming. To open your miracle now, you must stop asking heaven to move and begin asking yourself to listen. For heaven moves constantly. It is your awareness that lags behind. Listening is the act of catching up to grace. It requires humility to stop trying to write the story and instead read the one already unfolding. You are not the author. You are the beloved character, and the author has never lost the plot. Surrender is the sacred courage to trust the author's pen, even when the ink seems dark. It is to believe that the scene you are in is necessary for the ending you cannot yet see. When you trust that, peace enters like a companion who knows the road ahead. The gate opens not because you force it, but because you finally stop pushing against it. You realize it opens inward. Many miss their miracles because they keep knocking on doors that were never theirs. They confuse persistence with alignment. But the heart that has learned surrender knows when to stay and when to step away. It recognizes that rejection is not always punishment, but redirection. What leaves your life often clears the way for what belongs. To open your miracle today, you must bless what left you as much as you welcome what comes. For bitterness locks the gate from within, and forgiveness is the key that releases it. You may look at your life and see fragments, plans that never bloomed, efforts that fell apart. Yet from heaven's view, those fragments form a mosaic. The miracle is not always in fixing what broke, but in discovering beauty through what broke. Surrender teaches you to see purpose where once there was pain. It turns scars into stories, losses into lessons, endings into entrances. You do not need to understand how it works, you need only to yield to the transformation. The miracle waiting before you does not demand performance. It asks only for posture, the posture of openness, of readiness, of reverent expectation. To open it is to whisper yes without knowing what comes next. It is to say, I trust you, and mean it. When that yes leaves your lips, unseen doors begin to move. What was frozen thaws. What was delayed accelerates. What seemed distant draws near. For heaven honors trust more swiftly than toil, and yet do not mistake surrender for passivity or apathy. The surrendered soul is the most alive of all. It does not drift aimlessly. It listens actively. It senses the wind and adjusts its sails. It knows that obedience is not heavy when carried by love. Every action it takes is infused with grace. Every step aligned with timing. To live in surrender is to walk in rhythm with eternity, unhurried, unafraid, unbound. You have spent long seasons carrying the weight of what was never yours to carry. The worry, the timelines, the expectations. But now is the hour to lay them down. The miracle cannot enter hands that are full of control. Empty them. Lay down the urgency. Heaven is not late. It is precise. Arriving at the moment when your surrender meets its season. And that moment is now. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the gate creak open. The quiet turning of destiny's hinge. Not because you have forced it, but because your spirit has aligned with its key. The greatest miracle of your life waits not in the distance but at your doorstep, wrapped in the simplicity of peace. When you cease to strive, you see that it was never absent. It was waiting for you to stop running. The divine always chooses stillness for arrival. The same way dawn does not rush but unfolds, your miracle comes gently, asking only that you remain open enough to see it. You do not chase the sunrise, you turn toward it. So too turn toward the grace of this day. The miracle is not something to earn. It is something to receive. And reception requires rest. Let your striving end. Let your faith rest in its fullness. For today, the gate stands open. The treasure waits. The invitation is whispered into your heart. Release your grip, lift your gaze, and open. The miracle is here, not because you have reached for it, but because you have finally stopped resisting it. Surrender has done what striving could not. The door is open. The gift is given. All that remains is for you to step through. There are moments when the air feels thick with eternity, as though the ordinary fabric of time has worn thin and something infinite shines through. This is one of those moments. The ground beneath you, the breath within you, the very stillness around you. It is all charged with quiet holiness. Yet most pass through such moments unaware, their hearts too crowded with noise to notice that heaven has drawn near. They wait for thunder when heaven often arrives as a whisper. The miracle you seek is not distant. It is here, resting upon this very moment, asking not for your effort but for your openness. For what is divine cannot be achieved, it can only be received. The world has trained you to strive. From your first breath, you were taught that value must be earned, that success is proof of worth, that if you run fast enough, pray long enough, or prove yourself tirelessly, then perhaps you might be deemed worthy of blessing. Yet grace mocks that notion quietly, not with scorn but with gentleness. Grace says, stop running. Be still. The miracle that belongs to you will not chase you, nor will it reward your exhaustion. It waits for your stillness because stillness is faith's highest form. Only a trusting soul can stand still while the world hurries past, believing that heaven will move even when it cannot be seen. You have been taught that faith is fire and passion, but often it is quiet surrender, the kind that comes not with noise but with breath. The kind that whispers, I trust you, even when the path disappears. For the miracle is not something you make happen, it is something that happens when you stop trying to make it. The river of divine intention flows constantly, but the hands that grasp cannot drink. Only the open hand receives. And this is the paradox of your calling. The less you do in fear, the more you will see in faith. To believe that today is holy ground is not to declare that it is free from imperfection, but to recognize that imperfection itself has been chosen as the stage upon which grace performs its wonders. The dust of the earth has always been heaven's canvas. The holy does not demand gold floors or polished walls. It seeks humble hearts and open spirits. The moment you realize this, every place becomes sacred. Every hour becomes potential for revelation. When you look at your life through this lens, even the waiting feels divine, for you begin to sense that heaven hides within delay, shaping you quietly for what it has already prepared. Surrender is the gate through which all miracles pass. It is not an act of defeat, it is the boldest declaration of trust. The surrendered heart does not demand to know the outcome, it rests in knowing the one who holds it. There is immense freedom in that resting. For as long as you fight to control what is beyond you, you remain bound by your own limitations. But when you yield, when you unclench your soul, you make space for heaven to do what only heaven can. You become like the soil yielding to the seed. The soil does not labor to grow the plant. It simply receives, and in its quiet yielding, life emerges. Today, this is what is asked of you, not more effort, but more openness. You stand upon holy ground, though you may not see the glow beneath your feet. The very air that surrounds you hums with purpose, but you must attune your heart to hear it. The miracle that belongs to this day is not reserved for the deserving, it is revealed to the surrendered. For surrender is sight. It allows you to see what striving blinds. There is a rhythm in the divine that does not match the rhythm of the world. The world demands speed, heaven moves in stillness. The world rewards control, heaven releases blessing through trust. The world says, earn your way. Heaven says, open your heart. To live in the sacred rhythm of heaven is to walk at the pace of peace. It is to realize that nothing divine is ever late, and nothing meant for you can pass you by. But this peace cannot dwell in a striving heart. Striving is noise, and miracles are born in silence. Think of how dawn breaks, not in a rush, not in chaos, but in quiet unveiling. The sun does not force its way over the horizon. It simply appears when the time is right. So it is with your miracle. It is already on its way. Indeed, it may already be here, waiting for you to notice. The work of heaven is not to create the miracle anew, but to open your eyes to the one that already stands before you. And when your eyes finally see, you will realize that grace was never delayed. It was simply disguised. To believe that today is holy ground is to live awake. It is to stop postponing your awareness of God's nearness until things improve. It is to stop saying, when this resolves, then I will have peace. No, peace is the very thing that resolves what you fear. The miracle is not after the storm, it is in the storm. When you surrender, you do not invite weakness. You invite strength greater than your own. You stop carrying life on your shoulders and allow life to carry you. Many search for signs, longing for proof that heaven has heard. But the truest sign is not outside you, it is within you. The quiet conviction that even now, something unseen is aligning in your favor. That conviction is not imagination, it is communion. It is the echo of divine timing within your soul. To nurture it is to stay aligned with the rhythm of heaven, to move in step with what is unfolding, even when your eyes cannot yet perceive it. The miracle of surrender is that it transforms perception. The same world that once seemed hostile becomes radiant. The same circumstances that once seemed barren reveal hidden fruit. Nothing outside has changed, but you have changed, and that change changes everything. It is as if a new light has dawned over familiar fields, and suddenly you see the shimmer of grace where before you saw only dust. To open what heaven has already placed before you requires not striving, but surrender. The miracle does not resist you. It simply waits for you to stop resisting it. Heaven's blessings are not withheld. They are flowing even now, like a river ever passing by. But you must stop damming the current with doubt and fear. Release your need to know how it will happen. Release your obsession with when. The how belongs to the divine. The when is already now. Look closely at your own heart. How much of your energy has been spent trying to make things happen, to control, to predict, to force? Has it brought peace? Or has it only deepened your weariness? You cannot open what you are clenching. The gates of heaven swing open not by the power of your will, but by the softness of your faith. Faith that dares to rest. Faith that dares to wait without panic. Faith that knows the ground beneath your feet. This ground, this moment, is sacred, because the eternal stands upon it with you. Surrender is the lost art of sacred living. It is not passivity, it is partnership. It means you still move, but you move in response to guidance, not in reaction to fear. You still speak, but your words are shaped by trust, not anxiety. You still act, but your actions flow from peace, not panic. The surrendered life is not a life of doing nothing. It is a life of doing only what matters. And that precision of spirit makes room for miracles. When you live in surrender, time slows. You begin to see the threads connecting every moment. What you thought were interruptions reveal themselves as alignments. What you thought were losses reveal themselves as liberations. What you thought were delays reveal themselves as divine timing. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is random. You begin to realize that the very ground you stand upon has always been holy. It was your eyes that were late in seeing it. Today, as you stand in the quiet of this sacred date, October 5, heaven speaks not with thunder but with tenderness. It says, stop fighting the current. Stop asking for what is already given. Just open. The miracle you long for is not waiting to be created. It is waiting to be received. The only barrier left is the illusion of separation, the belief that you must do more, earn more, prove more. But the holy does not respond to merit. It responds to openness. Perhaps you have been carrying heavy prayers for years, prayers that seem unanswered. Perhaps you've watched doors close and dreams fade, thinking heaven had forgotten you. But what if heaven never said no? What if it simply said, wait until you are ready to receive without fear? Readiness does not come from striving, it comes from surrender. When your heart ceases to resist the path you're on, you create the very conditions where miracles can manifest. The gate is within you, the key is release. To walk on holy ground is to walk slowly. To open your miracle is to do so without haste. Rushing is the language of fear. Reverence is the language of faith. When you move with reverence, you align with the divine rhythm that governs all creation. You stop trying to outrun your destiny and instead walk alongside it. You realize that heaven was never behind schedule. You were simply running ahead. And so, in this moment, pause. Feel the holiness of now. Do not think of tomorrow or of what has been. This moment is complete. It holds all that you have prayed for in seed form. The miracle is not beyond the horizon. It is unfolding beneath your very steps. Each breath you take is part of its opening. Each heartbeat is a confirmation that heaven has not forgotten you. You do not need to understand the entire plan. Understanding has never been the key. Trust has. The soil never demands to know the design of the flower it carries. It simply receives the seed and yields to the process. You are that soil. The divine has already sown its promise within you. All that is left is to yield. When you finally release the need to make things happen, you begin to notice that they begin to happen naturally. That is the rhythm of grace. Effort replaced by flow, fear replaced by faith, striving replaced by surrender. The miracle comes not as a thunderclap but as a sunrise. It arrives not because you chase it, but because you finally stopped running from it. This day is not ordinary. It is charged with quiet glory. The invisible world is closer than your breath, waiting to be acknowledged. You are surrounded by favor, guided by unseen hands, loved beyond comprehension. And the gate that separates you from the fullness of that love is not locked. It only needs to be opened from within. The act of opening is simple. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is a whisper. I let go. When you say those words and mean them, heaven rushes in. What was tangled begins to unfold. What was closed begins to yield. What was delayed begins to move. You realize that you were never waiting on the miracle. The miracle was waiting on you to believe that this very moment, is holy ground.